welcome everybody. This is Beth Wolhofer. Today at Spiral Dynamics Live Integral, we're doing Uncover Your Unconscious Religions. And we're all going to find out what we actually believe. Buckle up your religious mindset and let's go. So this is a fun workshop. So I think there could be a lot of directions this goes. It could be like super like a lot of people crying and a lot of like emotional work and everyone's just like on their knees and like praying. But I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be a fun workshop where we kind of tongue in cheek try to uncover our current unconscious beliefs. And I know it's probably kind of ridiculous to say you're going to find your unconscious beliefs because every time I play with these concepts, I actually just come up with the things I already am conscious of. So I don't think you should worry too much about it, be like, oh, but that's not unconscious. I need to keep working. So just have more fun with this and come up with the things that first come to mind. And I have a bunch of different questions that I think during this session we'll eventually hopefully run into something unconscious. So don't worry too much about the word unconscious. And also, what is the word religion? Religion means it's just something that you believe in. And I'm going to go over more of that. So this is a fun workshop.
Beth, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can you hypnotize all of us? Therefore, we'll be able to tap into our unconscious.
You know, I really wish I had studied hypnotism before this session because then it would help me do that better. But unfortunately, I'm not a hypnotist expert right now. But maybe one day, Veronica.
All right.
All right. So today I'm going to go over the agenda first. That's very meta. I'm going to go over the objectives, the format. We're going to take some time to self-evaluate and then review your results. And then there's going to be a group discussion, but it's totally optional. And I want you to know during the whole session that you don't need to share anything. Like you may find something that's very personal and you realize like, wow, I need to do a lot of work on this, or I'm embarrassed about this, or I am a bad person because I believe in this, or whatever you're going to find. I don't want you to think that you need to share anything. So I don't want you to self-censor as you do this exercise. So there's no sharing required. If you just want to say like, this was really a waste of my time at the end, or I really thought that was interesting, you could just share that. There's no need to share any specifics. I really want people to feel safe that no one needs to share anything. I'm not looking to like find out everyone's deepest, darkest beliefs in this session. So just feel really safe in this space. Okay. So the objectives are to identify your unconscious religious beliefs. And again, the word religious it's more like tongue in cheek because I feel like there's a lot of triggering around the word religion, at least for me. Decide if you want to make any changes. That's again, like there's no big thing. This is a Saturday. You can do whatever you want to and just enjoy the time. So I'm going to do a little intro into religion, and then we're going to do a 20-minute self-assessment where I go through different questions. And for the self-assessment, I recommend using a notepad, a pen, or, oh yeah, let me do this real quick. Or you can actually copy these slides. So let me go ahead and share these slides with you. Give me 1 second. So that way you can make a copy of these slides. And if you're that kind of person who just wants to type this slide into the slide itself, you can actually just do that. And then that way, so you make a copy of it. Don't try to edit these ones. Use the copy, make a copy button. And then that way you can make just type right into the slides, right? For those of you who are super efficient and part of your religion is just being very efficient, you can just type into the slides. Okay, good. Or you can use a paper and pen, like from a tree. So then we'll review the results and you can share. Again, sharing is optional. So if you don't know anything about spiral dynamics, you can read this slide at your own convenience. But we're here at blue, purposeful order, authoritarian, traditional. So we're going to look at this level right here in the spiral. So I was raised in a blue Orthodox Christian Calvinistic church. And that really has shaped me. My father was the pastor. So a lot of people went to church as children, but they were sheeple. They were sheep. My dad was the pastor, and I think that really does shape how I approach religion, because my dad was the boss telling everyone else what God wants them to do. And so I think I got a lot of his like power from him knowing what's happening and what should happen. So we were taught things like the Ten Commandments, the 5 points of Calvinism, the Catechism. These are things that we were drilled. I mean, it was like the pastor would call out some part, and then we would have to echo the next part. And we memorized. I read the Bible 5 times as a young person. So I know I was taught this was not a joke. This was like very serious. And if you did not know and did not follow all the points perfectly, you would go to hell. So it's really like life and death is on the line here. Also, if you really dig into any of these things, they don't make any sense. Like things contradict each other, which is a really important part. So when you realize what your beliefs are, you'll often find they contradict each other. And that's the whole thing, is like blue religions don't make sense. They're not rational. They're pre-rational. So that's a test that as you write down your precepts and things that we go through today, you may find they're contradicting each other. And that's a sign that you're in the right place, that you're doing the right work. Okay, so the interesting thing though is that I knew what I believed in. You know, I knew what I believed in. My father knows his belief system. And now, do I even know what I believe in? I think it's all unconscious. I see a hand, Steve.
I find that looking at Christianity has rewards for seeing the integrity and wisdom of it, perhaps, or the unity, its benefits, rather than just looking at its contradictions. And also, I think it's good that you're saying that we want to uncover our contradictions, because then we can kind of transcend them in finding some synthesis or unity, perhaps, that's more real than the contradictions that are perceived, maybe. I don't know.
Could be. I really want us just to open our minds, and I'm going to give tons of questions. So what we end up doing with that at the end is going to be up to you. It's going to be very like a personal decision. But thank you, Steve, for that comment.
And by the way, I am definitely not a Christian. Technically, I've read some of the Bible, but what I see is incredibly wise, inspiring, incredibly correct about everything is kind of metaphorical or like allegorical maybe in the Bible, and that's a way for people to understand something on kind of a subliminal, non-cognitive level. But yes, I find it all, if you can understand the metaphors correctly.
Yeah, that's a whole nother session, Steve, to go into Christianity. All right. So we all have these blue beliefs. And if you believe that you don't have any beliefs, maybe that's your belief. So this workshop is going to help you uncover those beliefs so that we can become more conscious. So find the beliefs that really trigger you. Find the ones that you feel passionate about, that they feel true. They don't need any evidence. That's what we're going to look for today. So, okay, we're going to start. God is. So go ahead and grab your paper. I'm going to set a timer for just 1 minute. So you have 1 minute to write down the definition of God is. And so there's no talking during this. It's not like you're going to tell us the answers. You're just going to write it down on a piece of paper. Does everyone have a paper?
Clarification.
Yes.
So we have to believe in a God that is ultimately good. I noticed your first contradiction there. Am I going to describe the ultimate good or the ultimate God?
Barbara, write it down. Write it down. You got triggered. That's it, Barbara. You're doing the work. Write it down. All right,
But
so this is a silent,
But it's just a good question. Did you mean to write God or you meant to write good?
the ultimate good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so everyone get your pens and paper and go ahead. I'm gonna start the timer. Here's my, okay, you guys start. We're halfway through the minute. So remember, just top of mind. Don't spend like, don't think, just write. And if everyone could go on mute, I'm hearing a lot of keyboards slamming. All right, good. Let's go to the next one. So this is like top of mind. We're just gonna like, it's like, whoo, what's on our mind here? Satan is, what is the ultimate evil?
Satan or Saturn?
Oh, is it a spelling error? Let me fix it.
I mean, think about how Saturn is created.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't write Satan very often. How do you even spell Satan?
Satan.
Satan. Oh, it's Satan. Okay, you guys know I don't do a lot of thinking about Satan. All right, keep going. No thinking, just writing. And again, if anyone can go on mute, I'm hearing a lot of now. I'm hearing a lot of clicking. All right, next question. So define your 5 key beliefs of your religion. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example from Calvinism. From Calvinism, they believe in this thing called tulip, total depravity. Every part of the human is touched by sin. Unconditional election. Nothing you can do can save you. Limited atonement. Only the people that God decides will be saved. Irresistible calling. When God saves you, you have to be saved. Perseverance of the saints. God will not let his saved be unsaved. All right, so that's an example. So now you write down the 5 precepts that are core. And I'll give us 2 minutes for this one because it's a little bit longer. All right, go. Paul, I think it's you that might have your mic on, off of mute. I hear a lot of like noises and things. All right, time is almost up. Wrap up your 5. Oh, so yeah, you have to make a copy of the thing, Steve. Yay. Make a copy of the slides. I think you should be able to make a copy. You can't edit this one because this is like the template. All right, so wrapping up your 5 points, let's move on. Now we're going to the 10 Commandments. So again, you may be just writing down the same things over and over, and that's fine. I'm just trying to get to it from different points, different angles. All right, so now you're going to write your 10 Commandments. And so this is an example from Christianity, their 10 Commandments. So you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, honor your father and mother. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet. So those are the 10 Commandments from the Bible. So we're going to now go and write yours. All right, I really like this language, but you kind of can do whatever you want to. So I'm going to give us 3 minutes for this one. So go ahead and start. Write your 10 Commandments. All right, time is almost up. Finish up your 10 Commandments.
I'm still writing up my 5 key beliefs of religion.
Oh boy. It's okay, Veronica. You can spend even more time on this.
Come on, Bet, you're asking us to write the rules for an entire religion here.
I know. You're right. You have to do it right, Veronica. Evidently, I'm finding one of your beliefs here.
And meanwhile, Josh is frying eggs or something.
Unbelievable. He's living his religion, Veronica. He's living his religion.
No, I wrote my stuff down. I'm just not overthinking it.
He's fast.
Thank you.
He's
See,
fast.
Josh is.
I'm slow. Hey, we all have a different strengths and weaknesses, okay?
Mm-hmm. All right, don't worry, Veronica. You can always come back to this too. Okay, we're going to the next one. Okay, this one's really good, Veronica. Put down the 5 points of your religion and think about this. Forgive me, somebody, something, I don't know, a cloud. I don't know what you're believing in. For I have sinned. I have. What did you do this week or not do that you are just like beating yourself up right now and you would love for somebody to come and forgive you? All right. So just think
This week.
this week, just think about this week. What did you fail? How did you fail this week? Maybe, something at work, something about being a parent, something about, cleaning the house or something. Well, just think. Okay, 1 minute. All right. Pencils down. Thinking about your youth. Thinking about your youth. What happened in your youth that you really wish you could be forgiven for? Right? Moving on. Forgive me. Thinking about your 20s, 30s, depending on how old you are right now. What did you do? What kind of sins? And again, remember, you don't have to share this with anybody, but thinking back, not as like whatever your belief system was in your 20s and 30s, don't think about it through that lens. Think about it now. Like, what do you just regret? You're like, I can't believe I did blank instead of blank, right? So thinking back to your early 20s with your current religion. All right, go.
Hi, Bet. If I may, I'm going to bow out of this session. I appreciate the importance of this inquiry for everyone, but I can't benefit from it. So
All right, Steve.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.
All right. And now thinking about the last 10 years. So again, I don't know how old everyone is, but just is there something in the last 10 years that you really just look back in the last 10 years and you're like, oh my gosh, I could have been doing something that you regret, or you wish that you had allocated your time differently or worked out more, or I don't know what it is, but just go ahead thinking about the last 10 years. Right, good. This one is a really fun question that I think will get to some people's deep religious beliefs. So this one, you again have to be really honest with yourself with this one. And again, no one's going to read this. You don't need to share this one with anybody, okay? I can get away with blank because, okay? So what can you get away with? What others should not do, but I can because something. Just fill in these blanks. 1 minute. All right, this one may be one that you can come back to. I think there's a lot here. And I can give you examples of what I saw in the Christian church around this one. Okay, now we only have two more. We have two more. So heaven is and hell is. So take 1 minute for heaven. What is heaven for you? All right, moving into hell. Remember, don't overthink it. Just the first thing that comes to mind. Hell is. All right, so that's 1 minute. All right, so don't forget you can make a copy of these slides and read them for, play with them, take 5 minutes a day, whatever you want to do. These are all here for you to play with and take your time to dig into this more. So now we're going to take, I think, probably more than 1 minute to just review through everything you've written down and just kind of synthesizing it, maybe circling, like I have it on paper in front of me. So maybe I'll like circle something or star or notice like trends, maybe something repeated. So whatever that means to you to synthesize it, let's take just 3 minutes to review everything we've written. All right. Well, it's nice if I'm not on mute. So we're going to do a meditation now on the feeling of that whatever's popping up. So reviewing your notes, we're going to look at the body, feel the body, and notice where in the body this sensation is. All right. So we're going to close our eyes just for a minute and notice where you have sensation on this feeling that's coming. So maybe there's one part of your notes that's popping out at you as a realization. You're just going to take 1 minute to close your eyes and feel that sensation in your body, breathe into it, and don't tell stories about it. Don't be like, oh, I have, blah, 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 blah. Don't tell some narratives. Just let your body focus on the sensation in your body. And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all close our eyes and sit comfortably. All right, so we're all going to sit comfortably. If you need to rearrange your legs, go ahead. And then once you're comfy, we'll close our eyes and do this meditation, just feeling the sensation in our body of whatever's popping out at you. So do a little body scan until you find where you have the most sensation when you're thinking about what's popping out for you today. And then breathe gently into that space. Notice if it feels like a tightness, a constriction, a fluttering. Softly open the eyes. So that's again something you can spend more time on your own. So feel free to spend more time doing that meditation if that felt like something you want to explore. So we're going to now just write down 3 takeaways. So again, just 1 minute. Is there anything you want to take away from this? Is it that you need to spend more time in religion, that this is absolutely a waste of your time and you're not ever going to coming back to this session? What is it that you're taking away from this? Anything? All right. So now it's group discussion again. Remember, you don't have to share anything, and it's really optional to share. So does anyone want to share anything?
I think has been noted in the comments, your questions are informed by your experience, that like where you're coming from, and so therefore these questions have to do with heaven and hell, God, God is the ultimate good. What does that mean? Those kinds of things. Maybe a different set of questions. Like, I think, what are the questions may be a useful thing for some people to ask, kind of go meta on. And because then, and I think at any time it's good to reflect on beliefs that may or may not be, beliefs that are unconscious, which may kind of, so reframing this may be more useful for me, is what I'm thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, guys, I told you right up front, this is from my father, my blue Christian. Like I didn't hide any of that, right? So next week, if anyone wants to do from a Buddhist, I'm fine with that. It's just like I don't have that experience, so I'm not gonna be able to bring that. Anyways, I hope this was still useful for most people, even though it was very well documented at the very beginning. This is a Judeo-Christian
Yeah, but we
point of
can't,
view.
but if the question is what's your hidden religion, then the questions have to be
Mm.
open, like as open as possible, because unless you
Yeah.
have really open questions, you can't get open answers. So as long as it's like, who's your favorite person in the world? Your mother or your father? Then those are the only options you're giving me. But maybe my favorite person is my teacher from kindergarten or something.
Yeah.
So it's like the more open-ended the question, the better. But I mean, I understand you were also being playful because,
Yeah.
like that's what we try to do here, is be playful.
hope.
But it's hard because what if you don't believe in sin, and I'm being forced to use the word sin? So then instead of
Mm.
completing your exercise, I have to say, well, I don't believe in sin.
There you
So,
go. See, you don't believe anything is wrong then. So that's good.
No,
Okay.
that's not accurate, Beck. I can say I
Okay.
don't believe in sin in your dad's sense and still believe in the ultimate power of evil.
Yeah.
So that evil and sin are not synonymous. Sin is sin
Interesting.
in the Christian sense is whatever your particular denomination thinks you shouldn't do.
Right.
Period.
Any act of
Evil-
transgression for or
But it's in the rules of the religion. It is not against humanity. Okay. So sin is the wrong word. Evil is a much broader term.
Mhm.
And wouldn't necessarily take into account my thinking the local pastor is full of it.
Mhm.
But might take into account that I don't think burning people at the stake is all that good an idea.
Okay.
So
So is it possible? Everything you guys are saying is so valid. It's 100% valid. I totally agree with everything you're saying. But is it possible that we could come back to this exercise? Because next time we'll do one on Buddhism, and you guys all can do your own. I'm perfectly fine with that. I was having fun with this one. Again, from my point of view, 100% upfront. It's from the Judeo-Christian point of view. But if we could just like focus on what we did today, I totally agree with all your criticism. It's 100% valid. Okay, so coming to this, what we did today, Josh. You're on mute, I think, because I can't hear you.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I just kind of want to defend the framework, because if you just switch out the terms, I think it's still valid and would actually just, the Buddhist one would look a lot the same anyway. I think a lot of them would look the same because, I mean, God is, so just like light is, Satan is, darkness is, 10 commandments. I mean, Buddhism has the eightfold path, sin, whatever negative behaviors and stuff like that. So I think as long as we don't get all caught up in the exact words there, I think this is a useful exercise. And I wonder, so I'm somebody who, even though I grew up in a quote Jewish household, I didn't grow up religious. So I don't actually I have no triggers from religion. Like I'm indifferent to it. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll play in this God Satan thing. But I wonder if other folks, they have kind of more of a bristling to it because they were a bit more indoctrinated into it.
This is all like really fascinating. And I mean, I guess I could have just like put / like light, dark, slash things that make you feel sad, right? I mean, it could have been like that. I'm trying to go extreme just to like get that trigger. That's really what I was looking for, is the trigger. What is the trigger? Okay. A bunch of people put their hands up, and I don't know if it's keeping order, but I see Barbara far to the left. So Barbara.
I mean, I grew up in the same tradition as you did, although certainly a more benign one. But, you know, one of the things that I always thought from history is how toxic religion was. You know, let's just go burn a few people at the stake. And looking at Said's Smart Blue, right? I wonder how religion fits in there, because religion tends to be about belief in something that is at best can't be documented, and often is absolutely totally contrary to reality, right? It's not just an unseen world, it is it is, you know, so many of the things are just bizarre, and I don't mean just Judeo-Christian, right? Across all religions, rather bizarre beliefs, and yet in spiral dynamics, blue plays such a role in socializing people, in going from, you know, the Vladimir Putins of the world into somebody who can live in a civilized society without rolling tanks across the ground. So my real wondering is there a smart religion? I know Said tends to think of Smart Blue as more in the economic and the legal system, right? Of we need rules of civilization, but people need beliefs that tie them together. Is there a way that we could help them find beliefs that were less toxic, so we didn't end up burning people at the stake? I you know, that was my final conclusion from all this. How do we help people detoxify their beliefs?
Barbara, I think that's a really nice concept. And I wonder if taking out the stake as the threat, right? I mean, you can think about religion and excommunication and, you know, being thrown outside the gates where there's gnashing of teeth. Like the Bible has all these descriptive words. And I almost wonder if it's just like gentrifying it too much, Barbara, because that's where the teeth are. It's like all that threat. I mean, hell, Barbara, hell. It's a bad place. It's a really bad place.
Kind
don't
of
have
like
the
going
fear
to
anymore,
an inner
but-
city in the United States, right?
What? See, Barbara, you're starting to reveal some of your hidden religions here. But yeah. I mean, I think that's the whole thing about blue is it is authoritarian, and if we try to gentrify it and make it like, oh, we're just gonna look sad at you if you do the naughty thing. I think that's the whole thing. It's like it's got teeth in it. Okay, thank you,
But I
Barbara.
wasn't talking about the teeth, Bet. I was talking about what was forbidden. So
okay.
the difference between, oh, I believe that some of these things should have teeth. I truly do. You know, drive-by shootings, for example, should be a capital punishment, even if you don't kill somebody.
Mhm.
But so
Yeah.
there you'll get one of mine. But the difference between having
Mm.
teeth and having bizarre rules about
Right.
about behavior, which in fact in a lot of cases are very toxic rules, is what I'm talking about smart religion and Smart Blue. You know, how could we make some of these rules of civilization less evil? Because some of the rules themselves clearly were invented by Satan, not by God.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, Barbara. Thank you. All right. The next person on my screen is Steve.
Yeah, I just want to follow on from what Barbara was saying there first, and then I'll say my reaction to the exercise. So I think it's interesting, Barbara, in terms of like that the metamodern crowd talk about the religion that is not a religion, and I was commenting on a post earlier today. Then I was thinking there's this sort of interesting thing because in spiral dynamics you kind of conflate religion with the blue developmental stage in societies or whatever, but there's actually two aspects to that. One is the authority aspect, and the other is the meta-narrative aspect, as in the overarching thing that allows you to make sense of everything. And I think you can actually separate those. So you can still have a kind of a mental framework that allows you to make sense of things without that becoming the kind of authority of social organizations. I think that's quite an interesting point to kind of realize that those can be separated. And therefore, you can effectively have religion, or whatever you want to say, belief, without that becoming some dictatorial system that compels everyone else to believe in it or follow it or abide by its rules or whatever. And then in terms of the exercises, I guess I did what Josh did. I just translated them into the language was useful for me. And I think I found it hard to find my unconscious, because what was coming up, even if I allowed it to be as free flow as possible, pretty much tallied with what I'd probably consciously tell you. So it's hard to find. I'm sure I have plenty of unconscious sticking points where if you prodded me there, I would kind of squeal, and I wouldn't necessarily consciously admit to them, if you know what I mean. So that's like, I didn't quite find those. Maybe it was too short a time pace, or whatever. But I did identify something. So I identified for me that basically evil and hell looks a lot like the red shadow in spiral dynamics terms. It is kind of hell's on earth for me. It's it's the children being raped in refugee camps, Syrian refugee camps. It's the mafia like kind of coercion of various dictators we see. So I see a lot of suffering on earth as basically the kind of hell on earth. And I also weirdly in a way somehow see the malignant forces as more real than the positive forces, and maybe that's because I kind of associate the positive with being more about openness and so there's nothing really to grasp at there, whereas the evil forces are kind of about they tend to just physically make me contract, so it all feels much more solid and real in some sense. That's an interesting kind of thing I think I'm gonna have to look into. And then and then generally kind of pretty wishy-washily, what I mainly came up with is kind of kindness and the pursuit of understanding as being the main things, basically the main things. I think for me at least are kind of my positives, my what I would see as the thing we need to pursue. But anyway, that's my reflections. Thank you.
Very, very fascinating. I that's really wow. Okay. I'm really excited. I think I might share some of mine later. Nice. Bruce is next on my screen.
Yeah, so for me, I was raised Catholic, but have long since, I guess I'm agnostic or atheistic. So I took these questions and kind of translated them for me, and I wasn't even thinking in a spiral way when I did that. But for example, like with Satan, I mean, I can see Satan as like a myth, like part of a control system to control people in society. And then for God, I see that as like the source, kind of this possibly this creative, negative entropic part of the universe. And what strikes me here, there's a song that was written in 1931 called Morning Has Broken. It was performed by Cat Stevens, but I'll just read the third verse of this. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. And to me, that's like the world is continually recreating itself in every moment. And that's, to me, like a very spiritual way of looking at the world, not as this, not that God is separate. If there's a God, it's, it's here and now. And also, if you look at, I don't know, some of the Christian writings, some of the Gospels, they're very, very metaphysical. The kingdom of God is within you is a very interesting statement to contemplate. But anyway, I will leave it there for now.
Thank you, Bruce. I love that poem. It gave me, or song, it gave me like tingles. And I think that's a sign of something being great. By the way, I didn't specify, but religion and spirituality, I think, are very different. And so that's like another important thing to be aware of, especially I think those of us who grew up in some religion now have a spiritual practice of some sort that we really try to stay away. At least personally, I try to stay away from that whole like ideological religious aspect. So, okay, Bruce, thank you. And Paul, you're next on my screen.
Let me lower my hand first. You know, the interesting thing for me was that what I came out of it was this really showed me kind of the end result of a 40-year journey from a very extremely fundamentalist, judgmental, sin and judgment-oriented Christianity to where I am now. And I would say that I even hesitate to say that I'm Buddhist, although that probably best describes it. From relating to a religion to relating to a personal spiritual practice. You know, like, and I think it was the 5 precepts. I only got 4 of them, but my 4 of my precepts were ultimately there is only perception. I am a verb. I exist within a bigger context. There are no absolutes. In my 10 commandments, I only got 3 and really only 2. But the first one was, thou shalt always consider the circumstances and context under which you are making your judgment. And then the second one, maybe the best way to put the second one is to say, thou shalt be totally willing to accept the results of your judgment. In other words, own your judgment. So that was my takeaway. And I don't really, when we did the meditation, I didn't really have a strong sense of anything. I suppose the closest was a sensation in my solar plexus. And I suppose what that was about was that, you know, I struggled with this stuff for 40 years. And my past isn't gone. I mean, I can't redo the past, but I don't live by its precepts any longer.
Wow, Paul. I'm really enjoying listening to people share their things that they wrote. That's really interesting. I've been inspired now that I am going to share mine too. Marjorie, please feel free to look at the PowerPoint and you can answer some of the questions for yourself and then share. All right, David is next on my screen.
So yeah, thanks for sharing, everybody. I like the insights that everyone's bringing. I was reminded of an interaction I had with my daughter a couple of years ago, and she was taking, I think it was like ancient civilizations or some type of ancient history class. And she was presented with a question of, is religion civilized or uncivilized? And I was like really impressed with her answer in a lot of ways. And her answer was, it's both and neither at the same time. And she was like, well, if you look at it from the standpoint that religion teaches people not to kill and not to steal and have a society where people aren't hurting each other, well, then it's civilized. But if you look at it in terms of promoting ideas of sexism and homophobia and impeding people's rights, then it's uncivilized. So it really just depends on how you look at it. And as we kind of went through the exercise here, from my perspective, I've always felt like blue is one of the most challenging stages to integrate. because yellow is so much about flex and flow and adapt and, you know, almost like being a chameleon to fit the situation. And blue is like, not going there. You know, I think of the Captain America, like, I'm not moving, you move. Like the absolute truth is there and it's not going to change. And yet the world is not going that way. The world's going the other way as far as life conditions. With the, I like the acronym, the VUCA conditions, the volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex. And like we just went through it with the pandemic, like all of a sudden the rules have to change, and where are they going to change to, and who's deciding, and how are they deciding, and are they making the right decisions? And I wanted to kind of offer there that when we have to have these situations where the rules have to change on the fly, that the way to hold it together is through integrity and authenticity. And those are like the key components, I think, to surviving those types of conditions where the rules do have to change. And if you don't have the authenticity and the integrity, then that situation of changing the rules can be exploited. So that's what I have to say about that.
That's great. Every single one of you has made me rethink my religion, and I really wish I could redo it right now. All right. Thank you, David. I'm going to share some of my stuff. So God is health. What's interesting to me is all these are super personal. Steve's like, suffering and like camps and things. And Barbara's like drive-by shootings, and I'm just like health, human potential, happiness, feeling great. So it's really interesting how we're just all coming from these things in a different way. Satan is weakness. I don't know. I just wrote down the first thing that came to mind. All right, my 5 precepts. Time is precious. Use your full potential. Everyone has something to bring. Don't sacrifice your body, and be kind. You guys can see, like, again, these are not unconscious. I totally agree with whoever was like, did we get to the unconscious? I don't know. I didn't. My 10 commandments. I'll just share a few. Be on time. This is like, I break this one all the time, as this group knows. I'm terrible at being on time. Fill every moment with productivity. Yeah. Short-term and long-term benefits. Those are just a few of them. But oops. My big takeaway from this is that I feel a lot of guilt for not being focused enough. Like I definitely was feeling like I needed to be forgiven for not focusing. So I don't know if I should just let that go or if I should just focus more. Like, I don't know. What that question that was like, other people should focus, but I can get away with it. That was I found that sentence to be super useful because I've been playing this session for a few weeks, and I'm always like, other people have to do this other thing, but I don't need to do that. So I think that is something there. There's something there that I also need to work on, which I don't know exactly what it is, but so those were mine. I'm glad all of us came to such different like points. So, all right, Josh, you're next. And David, I don't know if you have another thing or you just didn't take your hand down. And please line up whoever's next, like Bill, Veronica, other folks. All right, so Josh.
I think maybe the unconscious aspect could be like, if we were to read out our stuff, can we place parts of it into the spiral dynamics framework? And that might uncover something. I'm not sure what.
Yep, it could be. That could be fun. Another fun exercise. All right. Let's go to Bill and then Bruce, just so we get new people in.
Yeah, thank you, Bet, for doing this. I had to disappear for a few minutes because my son called, but I missed a little bit of the writings. But in thinking about what Josh said about Spiral, it seems to be about truth, you know, and beige it's sort of the law of the jungle. And then purple, it's about my kin. And then with red, it's, you know, whatever I want, you know, there is no law. And then with blue, then it becomes more authoritarian. What I thought when you wrote all the things from Calvinism is how it sort of keeps people in their place. You know, that it keeps them dependent upon the religion, whatnot. And of course, the authority and the truth is God. Then in science, with modernism, the truth is science. So it's no more supernatural stuff. It's to be found in logic. I'm not sure where the truth is with green, other than it's more, you know, there is no specific truth. And we're trying to find it, I guess, with the psychology. So when I was trying to write down meaning and purpose and stuff in your thing, coming from a green altitude, it's sort of like, well, everything's relative, and I really can't, you know, do it. So so anyway, that's sort of what I was thinking, and this is a lot of fun. One thought that I wanted to share with the group based on this is earlier this week, there was some talk about authoritarianism and our reversion to authoritarian, and, you know, why is that? And Jonathan Haidt talks about how we, as children, we're protecting our children, that we don't let them go out and play. We have to protect them from everything. And so when kids go out and play and they create rules for their games that they're playing, you know, they have to work it out. And democracy, you have to work it out. We elect politicians and they have to work it out. And when they can't work it out, they come running back to the authority figure, the parent, or in our case, the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court rules as to who's right and who's wrong. And it seems like we are failing our democracy. We are failing to talk with each other like we're doing here right now. I mean, we're actually talking to each other and maybe trying to find answers and work something out. But people are so stuck in their belief systems that I'm right and you're wrong. And they can't talk to each other anymore, and they can't work with each other. So they go to some authority figure, which is why they like Trump, or they just like to sign up for a club and let the club make the rules, but they don't want to be on the board and call people. Or in medicine now, you know, if you're the head of the ophthalmology department, somebody does something stupid and you have to call him and say, hey, that was stupid. Don't do that. But nobody wants to make that phone call anymore. No one wants to do the difficult work of democracy. So we revert to authoritarianism. And religion sort of does that, doesn't it? It's sort of comforting to know that you go back and there is a God. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you get to heaven. Yeah, it's just a thought. Random
I
thoughts,
think it's
you know.
really profound. And I really like that analogy of we have to run to the Supreme Court and to ask it to like, he hit me. Tell him to not hit me anymore. Like, that's really, really, and I almost feel like we should do some kind of session on that. Yeah. I mean, I look back on my childhood and do feel some sadness because I knew exactly everything. I knew where I fit in. I was going to be a wife. I was going to have lots of children. And I mean, that was what my role was. And so it was very nice to just have that confidence. And I don't have any confidence. I don't know anything anymore. Like I literally just don't have any idea if everything's going to be okay or not. I used to always know everything was going to be okay because in the Bible it said that God would never send another flood, right? He promised never to send another flood. And once I became an unbeliever, I realized like there could be another flood. There's no guarantee. So I do understand that desire to have the authoritarian, safe, someone in charge of everything, that we could all just be like, wow, God's gonna. I still want to pray. This is like a thing that I just wish I could just pray and be like, everything's gonna be okay. Anyways, all right, Bruce, you're next.
Thanks. Yeah, just touching on what you just said, about, having an authority, having a God, having, I was struggling with this earlier this week with a sense of sadness, like not knowing what to do, like what should I be doing? What is my purpose? And, if I, believed in God, I mean, I've gone to different religious organizations, and it's like, it's very appealing. Like, wouldn't it be great to be a member of this community? And then, but I realized like after like a week, I'd have to leave because it'd be like, I don't believe this. Like, I can't prove this. Like, so yeah, I was struggling with this, and I was doing some internal family systems coaching, and realized that, that I have this part that wants to know what I should be doing. And there's lots of things I can do. There's lots of things that are interesting, but what's meaningful, what gives me purpose. And through that work, I realized that, and this is kind of unconscious kind of shadow work, that the something I had forgotten, that the way for me to know that is not through a rational thought process. Like this part is very rational. It wants to work things out through thinking. And in a better approach for me, at least, is to meditate, and intuitively I will know what I want to do. Like, in my mind, thoughts will pop up, and it's like that, what is it? The still quiet voice, the still soft voice, whatever, it's that idea that, it's not God speaking to me, it's me speaking to me, but rather than being a rational process, because a rational process, I can't get out of what I already know, at least rationally. This is like a trans-rational process that says there's something more than my rationality, which is part of me. And if I can get in touch with that in non-verbal ways, and then act on that. Now, of course, this rational part, which is maybe very orange oriented, is going to say, well, how do you know that's right? But I can allow that part to evaluate these ideas that come up, because some of the ideas that come up may not be rational or be, good. There may be issues with them. So that part can still play a role, but it's unable to come up with my purpose for me. I can't rationally figure out my own purpose, I guess is what I'm getting at here. And this also relates to like pattern recognition in my nervous system. Like, it's very easy to go from information to a pattern that I know. It's very hard to go from a pattern I know to something new. But that's where something, a practice like meditation can help. So that was an insight that I had earlier, and it's something I kind of knew and had forgotten. And now I'm going back to, as again, a spiritual practice, not a religious practice, but doing some meditation and activities that can help me to know what I want to do. And it won't be any great. It's not like I have a great purpose. It's not like, God has a purpose for me or something like that, but it's that I'll be doing things that are meaningful and purposeful and be kind of at peace with that. So I rambled a bit there. I hope that made sense.
It was so in line with my everyday existence, because I am now an independent person. I don't work for I'm not a W-2 anymore. So every day I have to decide, what am I doing? how, and I ask this question all the time, what am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. And it's like sometimes I get this idea of like, oh, this is what I should be doing. And then I go gung ho. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that was not the right thing to do. Anyways, yes, Bruce, everything you're saying is so resonant with me. And I like to dig into the chakras because what you're talking about is like the rational mind, all of that is up here in the subtle. Like we can get into the subtle mind and get into our intuition. But then we can connect to the crown, which we can pick up a more morphic fields. So, getting to the chakras, I think is like the secret. I didn't write that down, but that would be one of my religious. And also the sympathetic versus parasympathetic. I actually wrote that down for hell is imbalance.
Interesting. Thank you.
I know, fascinating. Okay, let's go to Paul. And by the way, Veronica, if you want to weigh in here, I would love to hear from you. So, Paul, you're next. You're on mute, Paul.
I want to share a little anecdote that somewhat speaks to this whole thing, particularly if you're looking at it in terms of the spiral and why we're going through the struggles that we are now as a planet. Why is it there's this struggle between religion and spirituality and science, etc. And a number of years ago, I attended a lecture by a Christian author by the name of Elaine Pagel. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her. She's written, well, the particular lecture I was on was right after she had written the book of the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is one of the Gospels that were uncovered, part of the Nag Hammadi texts. And they're part of what's called the Gnostic Gospels. And they were discovered because they had been buried around the time when Orthodox Christianity really kind of gained its supremacy in Christianity. But prior to that, Christianity was kind of in a conflict between the Orthodox side and the Gnostics. And the Gnostics are basically, the term is basically based on gnosis, which is to know. And generally, Gnostic Christians really were following more of a contemplative path to know God rather than an orthodox, here's the rules, just follow them, goddammit, approach. And I asked her, there was a question and answer section afterwards, and I asked her what was her view? Why did she think that orthodoxy won? Because there was about a 200-year period that it was a real conflict between the Orthodox and the Gnosticism, Orthodox Gnosticism. Well, ultimately orthodoxy won, and that almost destroyed, it wiped out to a large extent the Gnostic elements. And her answer was really very interesting. She says, well, orthodoxy won because at the time it was more democratic. In other words, there weren't that many people on the planet who could really do Gnosticism. I mean, they were not able to commit to the rigors of a spiritual practice, a contemplative spiritual practice. They needed rules, regulations, and authority to follow. And I think maybe part of the problem that we have now is that there's still, and I'm not just talking about Orthodox Christianity, but this whole notion of needing authority figures, needing rules that you can say, I'm going to follow that, and needing the consequences if you don't, I think it's probably fair to say that for now anyway, for many people, orthodoxy is still more democratic. There just aren't that many people who really can follow that contemplative path. I mean, look at the numbers of spiral dynamics. I don't think I've ever seen anything that says that anything more than 2% of the world's population is second tier. I mean, that's a minority. That's not the masses. Barbara, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I agree. And it's part of our problem with the elites. The Harvard educated affluent folks trying to tell Main Street America what they should be doing, right? That they've never really lived in the real world, and they don't know what life is like for other people. So I understand where she's coming from. But the other thing that really popped into my mind, and that is power. It's really hard to control people in a Gnostic worldview. You just can't be the king and get out your sword and force people to do things. And one of the things that the Catholic Church did for 1,000 years in Europe is allowed the aristocracy to exert control in the name of God, right? And so I would say that what a great deal for a warlord to claim that he's anointed by God, and the priests are telling people that they have to knuckle under no matter how evil he is, because God anointed him, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the power aspect of it was probably more important in actual fact, but certainly her point that most people aren't able to do the contemplative path is not wrong.
All right, so thank you very much, both Barbara and Paul. That was really good perspective. I think Bill is next on my screen.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I would second that too. I think it's just more difficult. What always strikes me in this group is so many people did seem to come up with a Judeo-Christian value system, and we've had trouble with it, and we have evolved from it to something else, but we're not sure what it is, but we're somewhere else. I posted something in the chat. It's called Rethinking Your Beliefs with Tara Westover. This is a TED podcast, and she grew up in an even more orthodox, crazy family where her father thought that the government was part of the Illuminati and other stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable what she grew up in, and she came out of it, and she's become very famous. She's written a book and whatnot. And I listened to her. She was one of the most articulate women that I've ever met in my life. I thought, boy, it might be fun to have her speak at our group or something like that. So I found her website, and in order to get her to come speak, it costs $50,000, and you have to, pay for her airfare and have a private limo take her to and from the airport and whatnot. So she's obviously made it big. But it's a fascinating story. I guess the other story then is you realize this podcast, if you check it out, you'll find out that this guy has a lot of really interesting people. There's the Whole Foods guy in there. He had Pete Carroll, the coach from the Seattle, and I'm beginning to think he pays these people a lot of money to be on his podcast. That's why it's so good. And he's got advertisers and whatnot to do this. But this is it is a remarkable story, and how she it's a little bit like hillbilly elegy, where you grew up in this, very backward circumstance, and she somehow elevates herself to very high levels. But she talks about how when she, finally went to a Cambridge or Harvard or wherever it was she went, and she went with these very conservative, prejudiced ideas. And people were looking at her like, what is the matter with you? And she had to figure out that she was way off base. And she figured it out. It's an amazing story. So
I read that
Anyway.
book because she was homeschooled like me,
Man,
but she wasn't actually schooled at all, which is
Right.
it's such a good book. I think I listened to it and my husband listened to it too because he and I are both homeschooled. So we like to hear about any other homeschool stories. Yeah, she's really fascinating person. Man, note to self, I should start charging $50,000, right, guys? All right, Josh, you're next.
Yeah, so I was thinking about the whole religion thing and aversion to it and whatever. And I was talking with my friend the other day who I would say comes from a very often green perspective, but I think also has elements of yellow. And he was one of the first people to kind of get me to challenge like the environmental movement as not actually being very environmental. And I don't mean in like an anti-environmentalist way. But anyway, so we were talking about, I don't know, something, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to do with, I was like, well, maybe the world does need a little bit more of a spirituality or some sort of guideposts, because otherwise we take on other nonsense. And he doesn't like religion at all. He was born Jew like me, like not religious Jew, but he has a lot more aversion to it for some reason. But anyway, he was saying, well, our religion or whatever, it should just be compassion. And I was like, well, that sounds nice. But like, what is the framework for that? Because that's kind of what the fundamentalist identitarians claim they're doing, is compassion. They're like, we have compassion for these groups, and basically an infantilization of it. And anyone outside of that, we will be actively trying to destroy them, or at the best indifferent to their suffering. And the analogy in the past has been used like the some of the green stuff. It's like the love of a mama bear for its cubs. It's like, you're not going to deny that love is pure and true. But then they go and kill a guy who's walking nearby, right? So that's not, if that's where compassion without any sort of framework can go. And of course, a lot of people are pretending the compassion. It's more about like the spite towards the enemy or whatever. But I think that idea of definitely not religion, but spirituality, because all those terms are tainted. And you talk to anyone who's come from a religious background or anyone kind of who's progressive, they hate the religion thing. They can't. So there needs to be another way of looking at it. And maybe the way, and I tried this with my friend, and the only way I know he is considering something is when he doesn't have an immediate knee-jerk no response to it. If you think I'm a difficult person, he is like me times 10. And so I was just like, well, what about this? What about in war-torn regions or criminality, the importance, at least temporarily, of religion being a straightening force? And the fact that he couldn't just shoot that down immediately suggested that he at least may be considering that. So I don't know if going back to being like, look, this is how religion has been important for these folks. Once you acknowledge that, you may be acknowledging that we might need another version of that in the future. And I'd be curious if anyone has an idea of what it would look like. I think words like spirituality and religion just turn everyone off, though. Well, turn anyone who's not already into that off, let's just say.
Yeah, I totally agree, Josh. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, David, you made a really good point there in the chat.
Nice. All right. So Josh, I think the thing is we do all have some religion that we just sometimes are not conscious of. And I think it would be nice if we had a religion that all of us could be like, yes, this is it. That helps us live better and help be nice to each other and let everyone thrive. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Some kind of Bill of Rights, like a human Bill of Rights, maybe for the whole planet, that we can all say these are the things all of us believe. And if you're taking these things away from humans, then that's the crime, and you should be cast out into the darkness where there's gnashing of teeth. Something like that. Okay. So Josh, did you just raise your hand? All right, Barbara, you're next.
You know, I just heard the comment about people with, you know, backgrounds that were deprived or that didn't allow them access to the wider world. But and immediately popped into my mind though, when I was looking for a high school for my daughter, there was a local Baptist school, and some of their religious indoctrination, you know, they didn't have problems with behavior and all that, but some of their religious indoctrination just left me cold. So I looked at one of the higher rated yuppie high schools, and it turned out it had like the highest cheating rate in the state. And as I talked to a couple people who had been there and taken their kids out, what they said is, well, these were children of really aggressive business folks who, you know, the folks that ran Enron basically at the time, who thought the only crime was getting caught. And that's what they were teaching their kids. And I'll tell you, there's nothing in some of these ultra religious things that could possibly be worse than that, right? So sometimes what we think is a bad environment or a good environment, we need to look at more in the outcome context, which is you know, some of the stuff that we would call privileged environments turn out really awful people.
Barbara, you turn everything on its head. Now what we need is rights for all those privileged, spoiled people.
Dump them on a desert island and let them survive for a day or two without
Lord
being
of the
weighted
Fly-
on hand and foot.
Let them do Lord of the Flies. All the people who have never had to do their own dishes, never had to make their own sandwich. Okay, next up is Paul.
If you historically look at blue, in its very, very early forms, and I would almost say, I don't want to be necessarily quoted on this, but so early that it almost predates the concept of religions. But its very early forms were the need, you know, human population was expanding, growing, you know, it grew beyond just the tribe. And so how the hell do you live together? And how the hell do you live together without being rampaged on by a bunch of red overlords? Blue grew out of the need to have a set of rules that everybody, both the people in authority and those not in authority, could follow, so that there was a sense of safety in it. And unfortunately, ultimately, because there's that tendency, humanity had not been able to really define who was safe other than, you know, those and those who are like me are safe, and those who are not safe. So the other is evil, and we need to be protected from them. Ultimately, the human people in authority were able to use religion. They were able to use a surrogate of a god to say, these are the rules you follow, and if you follow them, we'll all get along just fine. And unfortunately, because how far back are you going for beginning of Blue? Paul, Zoroaster? I don't know exactly. Probably, that's why I was a little hesitant to say early Blue was prior to religion. Certainly prior to Judeo-Christian religion. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, I guess what I was trying to get at is we have not come up with a way to stop doing othering. We don't have an acceptable understanding or acceptance of humanity as a whole. And until we can do that, I don't know that we're going to get out of the messes that we're in. Because there's always going to be another set of others that you can put down, that you can enslave, that you can kill, that you can do, that you can cheat, that you can lie to. And I suppose the struggle that we're in now is to try to, come up with a way of defining what are those universal rules.
Paul, I like this thing that Bruce posted. I vote for this. UN published the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I didn't get to read them all yet, but I like it. I think it's what we should do. My vote is for that. So I think the principle, Lucifer Principle book, which I think, Josh, definitely you should read that book. Everyone should read it, by Howard Bloom. The book basically says there's always going to be a pecking order. There's always going to be a pecking order. You can't get out of it. Matthew 25, the winners win, the losers get more poor. That's just truth. It's just how it is. But I think there's an interesting thing that we could latch onto, maybe for humanity and the planet, is Earthlings unite. Earthlings unite, because there may be aliens, there may be extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials will be the other, and Earthlings, no, Earthlings unite for the planet, Josh. So if we think about us as Earthlings, and I'm talking about animals, plants, everything, bye, Bill. We need to really think about sustainable life on Earth for the long run, and maybe getting Earthling planetary material, all the DNA and all the organisms onto another planet, so it's not just one planet in case an asteroid comes and hits us. I think that could be a way for us all to. The other is the literal, like there's some other kind of creature out in the universe that may or may not, we might be ants to that creature, and then that maybe will help you rethink, like, should you just destroy that ant pile? Because we might be ants to them. They may not even think about us. And I read a lot of sci-fi. So anyways, maybe that's what our new religion should be, is Earthlings unite. How do we propagate Earth creatures and material in perpetuity? That's just like the ultimate good is Earth life continues. And don't forget Earth minerals too. Anyways, I don't know if that was a joke, but I'm actually pretty serious about it. I do think that if there are aliens, which there probably are, we should think about how we can work together versus like picking like, oh, I don't like people with brown hair and I don't like people who are this tall. and then we all just like fight amongst ourselves. Like, do you think that's going to matter when the aliens come down here? I don't think so. I think we all just need to be on the same page. We only have 5 minutes left. Is there any response? By the way, Veronica, do you want to say anything? You haven't said anything yet. Josh, your comment shows that whose side you're on.
Yeah, I haven't read any of the things that I wrote, but yeah, I mean, I have decades of exploring very, very deeply into all the monotheist traditions, the Eastern traditions. I think a lot of us do in this group. Obviously, we're all heavy thinkers and feelers. We also use our feelers. So yeah, like some other people said, I don't think I wrote anything unconscious. Although as I think I've mentioned before, I dream a lot, and I always sit with my dreams, because I think that's where the unconscious really comes through. And I glean a lot of insights about myself from the dream state. So I shared a link for this interview, this guy who has pre-birth memories. And if we're going to talk about belief, because I don't have pre-birth memories, so if I listen to this and it resonates with me, this means I'm believing in something, because I haven't experienced it myself, but somehow it resonates. So the way that this guy explains this life, what we're doing here on this planet, basically, I don't dispute anything he says, and I pretty much, it summarizes how I feel about what we're doing here, why we're here in this life. But to summarize, basically, this life that we're in on this planet, it's a three-dimensional experience. It's very dense, it's very material. There are other dimensions, and we come here. I do think that we choose intentionally to come here, but we forget about it. We go into a state of amnesia, kind of like this veil that we need to be in a state of amnesia, because we can't play the game. We're in this kind of game here. We can't fully experience it if we are in constant remembrance of God, or universe, or source, or whatever you want to call that. I know in the Islamic Sufi tradition, the mystics would sometimes warn the dangers of becoming intoxicated with God, because if you would have that experience of union, it would make it very difficult to come back here. The same way that I've heard stories of people in San Francisco being on psychedelics and being so high and so connected that they're just lying on a bench in a park for months on end. I was hearing the story of this guy that actually was lying on it. He was sunburned on one side only because he'd been sleeping on a bench for somebody had to come pull him off the bench and take him home. So, okay, I'm reeling this back in. We can't be in a state of remembrance, most of us, consciously. It's very hard to hold that realization, because most of us would not be able to operate. There are a few very well integrated people that can hold those realities together. But even so, we all need to mostly operate in this material realm. So and part of the beauty is that we're all striving and asking these questions. If we were in a state of remembrance, it's like if all of the traditions basically have sayings that indicate that. There's this quote in the Islamic, again, from the mystical side, because when we talk about orthodoxy can be really scary. Okay, like I totally recognize that. I'm sure there's something similar in the Christian and the Jewish religion, but the saying goes something like, God was speaking and God said, and I'm going to butcher it. I wanted to know myself. So I created the universe. So God cannot know itself, source cannot know itself unless it individuates. And we are those individuated bits of consciousness that in all of our multiple perspectives come to learn, and we sort of like we that information goes back to source. We're all collecting and absorbing these different multiple perspectives because that's how source learns about itself. If you're in a constant state of light, it's kind of also boring. So you need to create all of these, realms to actually experiment with creation. So I don't know if that sounded woo to some of you, maybe not, because a lot of you do resonate with the Buddhist tradition, which some of this that I'm saying may sound a little bit Buddhist also. But I would recommend watching that interview with this guy that has pre-birth memories, because the way that he describes remembering before coming here, I really believe it. I believe that that's what happens. And what the story that he tells, super, super interesting. And this guy's very grounded. He's not woo-woo at all. He's just a normal guy.
I resonate with a lot of the things you just said, Veronica. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. And I love that you have so much diverse background, like Sufi and all these things that I definitely don't have. So I really appreciate that. All right. Well, we've wasted another 2 hours of our live. Just kidding. I hope everyone had a lot of fun. And I said it was supposed to be fun. So I hope no one cried and no one had any kind of weird mystical experience today. All right. So see you at the next time. SDI Live out.
Thanks, Brett. Bye.